The math was simple. One grieving widower plus two professional manipulators equals pouring olive oil straight down the drain. Or so they thought. What Katarina and her delightful daughter didn't realize is that I didn't build a seven-figure import business by being a pushover. I just played one at home for 2 years, letting them think business success meant I was soft when it came to family matters. But when their house of cards finally collapsed, I was ready with the perfect response, and it involved a party, a bill, and the sweetest taste of justice you can imagine. Here's how a successful businessman got completely played by a woman at a wine exhibition. The wine exhibition trap. Picture this: successful businessman walks into wine exhibition, walks out with a financial parasite attached to his wallet. That businessman was me, and I should have seen it coming from orbit. But when a woman who looks like she stepped off a magazine cover starts asking intelligent questions about your Asiatico selection, logic takes a backseat to testosterone. The Athens International Wine Exhibition, October 2018. I'm manning my booth showcasing premium selections from Santorini and Nemea when she appears. Katarina Dimitriou, marketing director for a luxury hotel chain, 35 years old, auburn hair, green eyes like a wine-soaked hypnotist. She knew exactly which wines to compliment, exactly how to lean over the tasting counter to make sure I noticed her assets weren't limited to her professional expertise. We talked for 3 hours, but the hook came within the first 60 minutes. Red flag number 1 disguised as vulnerability. She mentioned her recent divorce, financial struggles, starting over in Thessaloniki. The way she said it with this slight tremble in her voice and downcast eyes made me want to protect her. What a knight in shining armor I was, ready to rescue a damsel in distress. Except the damsel was actually a piranha in designer clothing. She invited me to dinner that weekend, cooked an incredible meal at her apartment, pasticcio that would make your grandmother weep, paired with a bottle of my own robola that she'd apparently purchased after our meeting. During dinner she casually mentioned how much better her daughter would do with a stable father figure, how the girl needed structure and security. What she didn't mention was that the private school tuition I'd eventually pay would run 25,000 euros annually. Then came the bedroom performance that should have won her an Academy Award. This woman knew exactly what buttons to push, exactly how to make me forget my own name, let alone any lingering doubts about her motives. She had moves that would make a professional jealous and the enthusiasm of someone who genuinely couldn't get enough. Every time my business brain tried to analyze the situation rationally, she'd deploy some technique that short-circuited my thinking entirely. 8 months of this treatment. 8 months of elaborate home-cooked meals, always accompanied by strategic mentions of her exhaustion from working 2 jobs, her worries about affording her daughter's future. 8 months of mind-blowing intimacy that got more intense whenever I seemed hesitant about taking the next step. She never directly asked for money or commitment. She was too smart for that. Instead, she'd paint pictures of financial stress while making me feel like the luckiest man alive. I met the daughter exactly once during our dating period. 15-year-old Stavrula, though Katarina called her Stella. Sullen teenager who barely acknowledged my existence, which honestly seemed normal for the age. She spent the entire dinner staring at her phone, responding to her mother's questions with grunts and eye rolls. Red flag number 2, but I dismissed it as typical adolescent behavior. Besides, I was too busy being mesmerized by her mother to pay much attention to family dynamics. The marriage proposal came from me naturally. Katarina had played her cards perfectly, making me feel like I'd found my intellectual equal wrapped in a package that made my brain misfire. She wanted the wedding in Santorini. Romantic, she said. Meaningful, since that's where my best wines originated. Also expensive as hell, but she deserved the best, right? 55,000 euros for a wedding that looked like a Hollywood production. 200 guests on her side, mostly relatives and friends I'd never met. 23 people on mine, including my business partner and a handful of cousins. Should have been a massive warning sign that her guest list was 10 times longer than mine, but I was too intoxicated by the fairy tale romance to notice the numbers didn't add up. The reception went until 3 in the morning. Open bar featuring my premium wine selections, 5-course meal prepared by celebrity chef she'd somehow connected with, live band that probably cost more than most people's cars. Everyone kept congratulating me on finding such an amazing woman. Her family treated me like their personal savior, thanking me repeatedly for making Katarina so happy, for giving her the stability she deserved. Looking back with clear eyes, the whole thing was a masterclass in psychological manipulation. She'd identified a successful but lonely businessman, researched his interests and industry, then engineered a chance meeting that felt completely natural. She'd weaponized vulnerability to trigger my protective instincts, used incredible physical chemistry to override logical thinking, and gradually escalated commitment without ever seeming pushy or desperate. The honeymoon in Mykonos should have been perfect. 5-star resort, private beach, endless champagne. But even then, subtle changes were beginning. She seemed less interested in physical connection, more focused on discussing our future finances, how we'd handle household expenses, whether I'd considered adding her to my business accounts for convenience. Small conversations that didn't seem significant at the time but were actually her testing the waters for what came next. By the time we returned to Thessaloniki, I was completely hooked, convinced I'd married my soulmate, ready to build a life with this incredible woman and her teenage daughter. I'd gone from confirmed bachelor to family man in less than a year, and it felt like the natural progression of finding true love. What I didn't realize was that the woman I'd fallen for was about to disappear completely. The post-wedding personality switch. 2 months after the wedding, someone flipped a switch and my wife became a different person. I'm talking about a complete personality transplant, like a wine bottle corked until someone popped the seal and never let it breathe again. The woman who couldn't keep her hands off me during our courtship suddenly developed an allergy to physical contact that would make a nun proud. The transformation happened so fast it gave me whiplash. We went from daily intimacy to maybe once a month if I was lucky. The excuses started flowing like water from a broken dam. Too tired from work, stressed about a hotel marketing campaign, worried about Stella hearing us through the walls even though our bedroom was on the opposite side of the house from hers. The migraine excuse became her masterpiece. One evening, right after I'd paid 2,500 euros for Stella's therapy sessions, Katarina developed a room-darkening migraine that required complete isolation and zero physical contact. These weren't your garden-variety headaches either. These were debilitating, please don't breathe too loudly migraines that coincidentally struck every time I showed the slightest romantic interest, but somehow didn't interfere with her ability to go shopping or meet friends for lunch. The work exhaustion excuse was equally creative. Suddenly her job at the hotel chain became the most demanding position in Greek hospitality. She'd come home claiming to be mentally and physically drained from dealing with difficult clients and demanding bosses. Too exhausted for conversation, too depleted for affection, but mysteriously energized enough to spend hours on the phone with her sister discussing everyone else's personal business. And when intimacy did happen, the enthusiasm level matched that of someone fulfilling a court-ordered community service requirement. She'd lie there with all the passion of a dead fish, checking her phone over my shoulder, making grocery lists in her head. The woman who used to attack me like I was the last piece of baklava at a Greek wedding now treated physical contact like an unpleasant medical procedure she had to endure. The shift was so dramatic it felt like I'd married one woman and woken up with her emotionally distant twin sister. The passionate girlfriend who used to greet me at the door wearing nothing but an apron had been replaced by a roommate who barely acknowledged my existence. She developed this talent for being physically present but emotionally absent, like she was performing the role of wife without actually feeling any of the emotions that should come with it. I found myself lying awake in a bedroom I couldn't leave, feeling lonelier than I'd ever been as a bachelor. Here I was, married to a beautiful woman, living in my own house and feeling like a stranger in my own life. The isolation was suffocating. At least when I was single, I knew where I stood. Now I was trapped in this performance where I played the role of devoted husband while she played the role of reluctant wife. The beautiful, attentive woman who used to hang on my every word about wine terroir and shipping logistics now responded to my attempts at conversation with grunts and one-word answers. She developed selective hearing that filtered out anything resembling romantic interest, but somehow remained perfectly tuned to discussions about household expenses and Stella's mounting financial needs. I started feeling like a walking ATM who occasionally got sexual privileges if I'd been particularly generous with my credit card. The correlation became impossible to ignore. Big purchase for Stella's education. Suddenly Katarina's migraines would mysteriously improve for exactly one evening. Expensive family vacation to Crete. Brief return of physical affection that lasted precisely until the credit card bill arrived. The woman who used to cook elaborate dinners while wearing sexy outfits now served reheated takeout while dressed like she was heading to a convent. Romance died such a quick death I should have held a funeral service. Candlelit dinners became rushed meals eaten while she scrolled through her phone. Weekend getaways became solo trips for her to visit family, always conveniently timed when I'd suggested we spend quality time together. The worst part was the gaslighting. When I'd try to discuss the changes in our relationship, she'd act confused and hurt. What changes? She was just tired, stressed, adjusting to married life. I was being unreasonable, expecting too much, not understanding the pressures she faced as a working mother. Somehow my completely rational desire for physical and emotional connection with my wife had become evidence of my selfishness and insensitivity. I started questioning my own memory. Had she really been that affectionate before the wedding, or was I romanticizing the past? Was this normal married life, or had I been systematically deceived by someone who knew exactly which buttons to push and when to stop pushing them? The answer became crystal clear when I realized the timing wasn't coincidental. The intimacy hadn't gradually decreased as we settled into married life. It had stopped abruptly exactly when she'd secured what she wanted: legal access to my finances and a permanent provider for her daughter. The passionate girlfriend had been a performance, and the show had ended the moment the marriage certificate was signed. I'd been played by a master manipulator who understood that men think with their hormones and make terrible decisions when their blood supply gets redirected away from their brains. She'd weaponized physical chemistry to override my business instincts, then withdrew it once she'd achieved her objective. The bait-and switch had been executed with the precision of a military operation. But if I thought Katarina's personality switch was jarring, I was about to discover that her daughter had been taking notes. Satan's spawn unleashed. Stella had timing that would make a Swiss watch jealous. She'd wait until I was on crucial business calls with suppliers in Crete or distributors in Germany, then burst into my home office like she was announcing the second coming. Music would start blasting from her phone at volumes that could wake the dead in 3 different time zones. Not just any music either, the kind of aggressive rap that makes your ears bleed and your soul question humanity's future. When I'd motion frantically for her to leave, she'd pretend not to see me, dancing around like she was auditioning for a music video while my German clients wondered if I was running a nightclub instead of an import business. Her artistic talents extended to property destruction with surgical precision. Stella developed this amazing ability to accidentally spill red wine on expensive equipment like a trained assassin. My laptop got baptized in Agurgitico during a video conference with potential investors, turning a €15,000 machine into a very expensive paperweight. The coordination required to time these accidents perfectly with my most important business moments suggested this wasn't random teenage rebellion, this was calculated psychological warfare. The theft started small and escalated like a pyramid scheme run by kleptomaniacs. €20 would disappear from my wallet, then 50, then entire credit cards would go missing for mysterious shopping expeditions. But those petty crimes were just the warm-up act for what I'd later discover. Rolexes worth €80,000, jewelry, electronics, anything valuable that could be quietly liquidated, while I remained oblivious to the systematic looting of my own home. When confronted about missing money, Stella had mastered the art of fake confusion mixed with righteous indignation. She'd claim I'd promised her the cash for school supplies or emergency lunch funds, then manufacture tears that would make professional actresses jealous. These weren't just regular tears either. We're talking about full-body sobs complete with hyperventilation and accusations that I was calling her a liar. The crocodile tears were always her exit strategy. The moment I'd start demanding accountability for destroyed property or missing money, the waterworks would start flowing and she'd run to mommy for protection like I was some kind of child-abusing monster. Katarina's response became so predictable I could have set my watch by it. She's traumatized from the divorce. You need to be patient. You're the adult here. Every single time, like she was reading from a script written by Enablers Anonymous. According to Katarina's twisted logic, my desire to live peacefully in my own home made me the villain in this story. Expecting basic respect from a 20-year-old I was financially supporting apparently marked me as an unreasonable tyrant who didn't understand childhood trauma. The fact that I'd never laid a hand on the kid, never even raised my voice until the theft started, somehow got lost in Katarina's narrative about my lack of patience and understanding. The girl had developed diplomatic immunity within my own house. She could destroy property, steal money, disrupt business calls, and create general mayhem, then retreat behind her mother's protective shield whenever consequences appeared on the horizon. I felt like I was housing a teenage terrorist who'd been granted asylum by my own wife. Living with Stella was like sharing space with a sociopath who'd studied my daily routine and designed specific tortures for maximum psychological impact. She knew exactly when to blast music, exactly which equipment to target for destruction, exactly how much money to steal without triggering a full investigation. This wasn't random teenage rebellion, this was calculated psychological warfare designed to make me miserable in my own home. The gaslighting reached Olympic-level proportions when Katarina started suggesting that my inability to bond with Stella proved I wasn't ready for family life. My requests for basic respect and property protection became evidence of my immaturity and selfishness. Somehow the victim of theft and vandalism had become the perpetrator of family dysfunction, because I refused to embrace my role as a human punching bag with a credit card attached. The coordination between mother and daughter became impossible to ignore. Stella would create chaos, Katarina would provide cover, and I'd be left feeling like the unreasonable adult who couldn't handle normal family dynamics. They'd perfected a tag-team approach to manipulation that would make professional wrestlers jealous. Every attempt to set boundaries or demand respect got twisted into evidence of my failure as a stepfather and husband. I wasn't just financing Stella's education and lifestyle. I was funding my own psychological torture while being told I should be grateful for the privilege. The girl who couldn't be bothered to acknowledge my existence before the wedding had discovered that destroying my peace of mind was both profitable and consequence-free. The realization hit me like a cargo ship to the face. This wasn't accidental teenage rebellion or divorce trauma. This was a coordinated campaign designed to break me down mentally while extracting maximum financial benefit. Mother and daughter had turned psychological warfare into a family business, and I was both the target and the primary investor. But what I didn't realize yet was that these daily torments were just the surface level of their operation. The real financial hemorrhaging was happening in plain sight, disguised as investments in Stella's future, and the numbers were about to make my head spin. The walking ATM years. 25,000 euros annually for Stella to attend Anatolia College, one of Greece's most prestigious private schools. 25,000 euros for her to fail half her classes and spend the other half planning new ways to make my life miserable. I was essentially funding the most expensive underachievement program in Thessaloniki, while she treated education like an optional hobby that interfered with her real passion of making me suffer. I was paying 15 euros per insult and getting zero return on affection. Other people paid for entertainment, spa treatments, or luxury vacations. I was paying five-figure sums to live with someone who treated me like something scraped off the bottom of her designer shoes. But wait, there's more. Katarina insisted Stella needed therapy to deal with her divorce trauma. 14,400 euros annually for Stella to spend an hour complaining about how terrible I was to a professional who nodded sympathetically and collected my money. The irony was delicious in the most bitter way possible. I was literally funding sessions where she'd march into that therapy office and spend 60 minutes explaining to Dr. Papadopoulos how unreasonable, mean, and psychologically damaging her stepfather was. Stella's wardrobe costs rivaled those of minor celebrities. Designer jeans that cost more than most people's monthly rent, shoes that required their own insurance policy, handbags that came with authentication certificates. She needed the latest iPhone every 6 months because apparently her ability to terrorize me digitally required cutting-edge technology. Each shopping expedition felt like financing a small country's GDP, while she treated me like her personal ATM with legs. The summer trips to Mykonos with her friends became annual financial massacres. Not just plane tickets and hotels, but spending money for restaurants, clubs, shopping, and whatever other luxury experiences 16-year-olds consider essential for their psychological development. I'd receive credit card bills that looked like small business quarterly earnings. Also, Stella could Instagram photos of herself living the high life, while I worked 14-hour days to fund her lifestyle. Every expense came disguised as an investment in her future. The private school tuition wasn't just education, it was ensuring her success in life. The therapy wasn't just complaining about me, it was processing childhood trauma. The designer clothes weren't just vanity, they were building her self-esteem. The technology wasn't just gadgets, it was preparing her for the digital economy. Even her trips weren't just vacations, they were broadening her cultural horizons and building independence. The manipulation was so sophisticated it almost deserved admiration. They'd identified every possible way to extract money from me while making me feel guilty for questioning the expenses. Refused to pay for something, and suddenly I was the cruel stepfather who didn't care about her well-being. Ask for accountability regarding her grades or behavior, and I became the unreasonable adult who didn't understand childhood development. Express frustration about the constant financial drain, and I was the selfish businessman who prioritized money over family. I started calculating the cost per benefit ratio like I was analyzing a business investment. 25,000 for education that produced failing grades, 14,000 for therapy that increased her hostility toward me, thousands more for clothing, technology, and experiences that generated zero gratitude or respect. The return on investment was so negative it defied basic economic principles. The pattern became crystal clear once I started tracking expenses. Every major financial outlay for Stella's benefit was followed by escalated psychological warfare against me. Pay for private school, get blasted music during business calls. Fund therapy sessions, receive increased theft and property damage. Buy expensive clothes, endure more sophisticated insults about my appearance and personality. I was literally paying her to hate me more creatively. Katarina had turned guilt into a financial weapon with surgical precision. Any hesitation about opening my wallet triggered lectures about my responsibilities as a stepfather, my obligation to provide stability, my failure to understand the lasting impact of divorce on children. She'd weaponized every parenting book and psychology article ever written to make me feel like questioning expenses meant questioning my commitment to family. The most frustrating part was watching Stella's friends benefit from my generosity while she treated me like hired help. They'd raid my refrigerator, use my Wi-Fi, lounge around my pool, all while she regaled them with stories about how awful I was to live with. I was funding social gatherings where the main entertainment was mocking the guy paying for everything. I felt like a human credit card with no spending limit and absolutely zero fraud protection. Every day brought new opportunities for them to discover creative ways to separate me from my money while making me feel guilty for earning it in the first place. The psychological manipulation was so complete that I'd started apologizing for working late to afford their lifestyle demands. The breaking point came when I realized they'd turned my own generosity into evidence of my inadequacy. Not spending enough money proved I didn't care about family. Spending too much money proved I was trying to buy affection instead of earning it naturally. There was literally no amount of financial support that would satisfy them because the goal wasn't my money, it was my complete psychological and financial surrender. My bank account was hemorrhaging money while my self-respect circled the drain, and somehow I was supposed to be grateful for the privilege of financing my own misery. But as expensive as Stella's education and therapy bills were becoming, I was about to discover that Katarina had her own creative ideas about how to spend my hard-earned money. Year 3 of my marriage brought exciting new developments in Katarina's career. Suddenly, her job at the hotel chain required extensive late-night entertainment of important clients from Dubai and Russia, wealthy businessmen who apparently needed personal attention until 2 or 3 in the morning. The hospitality industry had become remarkably demanding, requiring my wife to provide round-the-clock service to these discerning gentlemen who obviously couldn't enjoy their Greek vacation without her dedicated assistance. I understood perfectly what kind of entertainment the hotel business required, but Katarina maintained her professional innocence with the dedication of a method actress, always returning home with detailed stories about business negotiations and cultural exchange programs. She'd provide receipts and have colleagues vouch for her whereabouts, creating an alibi system that could withstand casual inspection. Her monthly girls' trips started around the same time. Mykonos with her college friends, Crete with her work colleagues, Athens with her sister and cousins. Always the same pattern: luxury hotels, beachside clubs, expensive restaurants, premium shopping. Girls need their bonding time, right? Especially hardworking hotel executives who spend their weeks entertaining demanding international clientele. Financial logistics worked out perfectly. I'd pay for these rejuvenating getaways while she recovered from her exhausting schedule of late-night client entertainment. She'd return from Mykonos looking refreshed and energized, practically glowing with the healthy satisfaction of someone who'd spent quality time reconnecting with female friendships. The Greek islands apparently had amazing therapeutic properties for overworked marketing directors. Katarina developed this interesting habit of coming home simultaneously exhausted and refreshed, tired enough to avoid any physical contact with her husband, but energized enough to spend hours on phone calls discussing her wonderful experiences with mysterious friends I'd never met. She collapsed dramatically on the couch, claiming complete physical and emotional depletion, then perk up remarkably when describing the incredible massages and spa treatments she'd enjoy. The lingerie situation became particularly fascinating from a market research perspective. Her drawer was full of unworn designer pieces I'd never seen her model at home. Beautiful items that seemed designed for special occasions she apparently never had with me. Designer selections that required considerable investment but somehow never made appearances during our monthly intimate encounters. Every suspicious detail came with perfectly reasonable explanations backed by documentation that would impress forensic accountants. Hotel receipts, restaurant bills, airline confirmations, even photos with her female companions. Her colleagues would vouch for her whereabouts, her friends would confirm their shared experiences, her family would validate her need for regular breaks from married life. I found myself functioning as an unpaid travel agent for my wife's professional development and personal wellness programs, booking flights for her career advancement opportunities, funding accommodations for her mental health maintenance trips, financing meals and entertainment for her essential female friendship preservation activities. The Greek tourism industry was clearly benefiting from my generous investment in my wife's professional growth. The irony was so perfect it almost felt scripted by comedy writers. Every euro I earned importing premium wine and olive oil was being converted into luxury experiences for my wife to enjoy without me. I was essentially operating a personal travel fund dedicated to enabling her increasingly frequent absences from our marriage. The harder I worked to build our financial security, the more resources she had available for her solo adventures. My business success had created the perfect financial foundation for Katarina's expanding social calendar and professional obligations. She never had to worry about affording her monthly girls' trips or late-night client entertainment expenses, because her dedicated husband was handling all the boring financial responsibilities at home. While I managed import logistics and distribution networks, she managed her growing collection of international business contacts. The mathematics were straightforward and depressing. Calculate the annual cost of her monthly getaways, add the expenses for her late-night professional entertainment activities, factor in the premium lingerie investment and luxury wellness treatments, and I was operating a private funding program for experiences that somehow never included her husband. I'd become a silent financial partner in my wife's increasingly active social life. The pattern continued for months without variation. Katarina would announce another essential girls' trip or important client entertainment obligation. I'd provide the necessary funding. She'd return refreshed and glowing with satisfaction from her rejuvenating experiences. Meanwhile, our marriage continued its steady decline into roommate territory, while her external relationships apparently flourished with remarkable vitality. Eventually, even my business-focused brain started recognizing the correlation between my financial generosity and my wife's increasing emotional distance. The more money I invested in her professional development and personal wellness activities, the less interested she became in developing our marriage or investing in our personal relationship. Something was fundamentally wrong with this equation, but the evidence was carefully curated to maintain plausible deniability. The breaking point came when I realized I'd been subsidizing my own humiliation for years. Every credit card payment, every travel expense, every luxury accommodation had been funding my wife's secret life while she gradually withdrew from our marriage. I'd been playing the role of supportive husband while unknowingly financing the systematic destruction of our relationship. My business instincts finally overrode my emotional denial. When you suspect your investment is failing, you conduct due diligence. When you think your partner is stealing from the company, you investigate. When your wife's behavior doesn't match her explanations, you hire professionals to uncover the truth. The private investigator's goldmine. Best 5,000 euros I've ever spent. Better return on investment than my most profitable wine imports, more satisfying than any business deal I'd ever closed. While Katarina was busy getting her cardio workout with her personal trainer, I was getting my own kind of exercise, building a case that would destroy her fantasy world permanently. The investigator I hired wasn't some sketchy character from a detective novel. Professional, discreet, expensive as hell, and worth every single euro. 3 weeks of surveillance, and this guy delivered a masterpiece of documentation that read like a cheating wife's greatest hits album. Photos, timestamps, locations, license plate numbers, even audio recordings of phone conversations that would make a soap opera writer jealous. Turns out my wife had been getting very personal training sessions at Olympic Fitness in Kalamaria. Yannis Kostakis, 28 years old, built like he'd stepped off a Greek statue and apparently specializing in exercises that required extensive one-on-one attention. The affair had been running for 14 months, with the consistency of a professional athlete's training schedule. The irony was so perfect it felt like divine comedy. I'd been paying for Katarina's gym membership for 2 years, thinking I was supporting her health and wellness goals. What I was actually funding was a dating service for married women seeking athletic entertainment. 60 euros monthly for her to have access to premium exercise equipment and premium male specimens who knew exactly how to work out her tension. The photos were artistic in their damning clarity. Katarina and Yannis entering Hotel Makedonia in Chalkidiki, emerging 3 hours later looking like they'd participated in some very intensive physical training. Multiple sessions at various hotels across northern Greece, always during her supposed girls' trips or business conferences. The timestamps showed remarkable consistency. She'd check in around noon and check out by evening, just enough time for a comprehensive workout session. My favorite piece of evidence was the airport parking lot encounter. Apparently when hotel rooms weren't available, they'd settled for automotive athletics in his BMW. The investigator had captured them engaged in activities that definitely weren't approved by the vehicle manufacturer's warranty. Katarina's flexibility training had reached new heights of creativity, proving that expensive cars serve multiple purposes beyond transportation. The financial records told an even more interesting story. Every hotel bill, every dinner at romantic restaurants, every gift she'd purchased for her trainer, all funded by credit cards that I paid monthly without question. I'd been financing my wife's affair like a generous patron of the arts, except the art form was adultery, and the beneficiary was a guy who looked like he bench-pressed small cars for entertainment. Yannis wasn't her only fitness instructor, but he was the main event. The investigation revealed others would surface later, but this 14-month marathon with the personal trainer was the centerpiece of her deception. A pattern of serial cheating that would make a professional athlete proud of her endurance training. The Dubai client from her hotel job turned out to be very real, very wealthy, and very interested in Greek hospitality that extended far beyond tourist recommendations. Credit card records showed expensive gifts, luxury dinners, and hotel suites that coincided perfectly with his business trips to Thessaloniki. My wife had been providing 5-star customer service that definitely wasn't mentioned in the hotel's official brochure. Even her best friend's husband had received Katarina's special attention during a weekend when the friend was visiting her sick mother in Patras. The investigator had photos of them entering her apartment Friday evening and not emerging until Sunday afternoon. Apparently, friendship loyalty meant something different in Katarina's moral universe, where helping a friend meant entertaining her husband while she dealt with family obligations. The investigator had also uncovered something that made my blood run cold: evidence of financial activities I knew nothing about. Bank records, hidden accounts, money movements that suggested Katarina had been planning something far more sophisticated than simple adultery. The full scope of her financial deception would require deeper investigation, but the preliminary findings suggested I'd been played on multiple levels. Even more disturbing were the emails with a divorce lawyer discussing strategy for maximizing alimony payments and property division. Katarina had been planning her exit strategy while simultaneously planning her next affair. She'd researched Greek divorce law, calculated potential settlements, and even identified which assets would be most difficult for me to hide. My loving wife had been preparing to financially destroy me while I remained blissfully unaware of her extracurricular activities. This wasn't casual infidelity or a momentary lapse in judgment. This was systematic, calculated, professional-level cheating with financial planning and strategic execution. Katarina had turned adultery into a business model, complete with multiple revenue streams and careful documentation of potential divorce benefits. The timeline showed the affairs had started within 6 months of our wedding. While I was adjusting to married life and supporting her daughter's expensive lifestyle, she was establishing relationships with personal trainers, hotel clients, and married friends who needed consolation. She'd been operating a sophisticated network of romantic connections while maintaining the facade of devoted wife and mother. €5,000 had purchased absolute clarity about my marriage, my wife, and my future. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and perfectly documented. While Katarina continued believing she was playing a fool, I finally had the ammunition needed to end this charade permanently. But before I could spring any trap, I needed to make sure she couldn't destroy me financially when everything came crashing down. The Asset Protection Masterclass. The moment I had that private investigator's report in my hands, I knew exactly what needed to happen next. Time to use my business brain for something more important than importing olive oil, protecting every euro I'd earned from the parasites who thought they were about to cash in on my stupidity. You don't build a 7-figure import business without learning how to move money efficiently and legally. Those same skills that helped me navigate international banking regulations and currency exchanges were about to become my secret weapons in the coming divorce war. While Katarina was busy getting her afternoon workouts with Yannis, I was getting my own kind of exercise, financial gymnastics that would make Olympic athletes jealous. I turned liquidity into legal invisibility using offshore trusts, crypto wallets, and shell companies. Money started flowing out of our joint accounts faster than wine from a broken amphora, disappearing into Cyprus accounts and Luxembourg funds that existed in financial structures more complex than ancient Greek architecture. She'd been planning to take half of everything visible. Too bad most of it was about to become invisible. Creating new corporations became my favorite hobby. Each business entity served as another layer of protection, another wall between my assets and her greedy hands. I was building a financial fortress with more defensive positions than the walls of Constantinople, and she was too busy getting stretched by her personal trainer to notice the construction project happening right under her nose. My wine inventory got converted to cash and disappeared into offshore accounts faster than Katarina's clothes during her hotel encounters. The import-export business needed restructuring surgery. The main company that generated most of our visible income got transformed into a management consulting firm with minimal assets. The actual importing operations moved to new entities owned by trusts established in countries with excellent privacy laws. On paper, I went from wealthy businessman to modestly paid consultant almost overnight. Equipment and machinery posed interesting challenges. Expensive bottling equipment, refrigeration systems, delivery trucks, all vulnerable to divorce court mathematics. The solution involved creative lease arrangements with newly created companies and strategic sales to business partners who understood the temporary nature of the transactions. Assets worth hundreds of thousands of euros vanished from my balance sheet like morning mist over the Mediterranean. Real estate required the most delicate touch. Our house in Calamaria was clearly marital property, but I owned 2 other properties through business entities that predated our marriage. Both got sold to shell companies I controlled, with the proceeds disappearing into investment funds based in jurisdictions where Greek divorce courts held about as much authority as a neighborhood taverna owner. The race against time added incredible urgency to every transaction. Each day Katarina continued her affair was another day closer to her eventual divorce filing. I had to complete this financial reconstruction project before she finished her extended audition process with various personal trainers and decided to make her move. Every morning brought new possibilities for discovery. Every evening meant another day of successful asset protection completed. Working 18-hour days became routine. Mornings managing legitimate business operations, afternoons meeting with lawyers and accountants, evenings handling international wire transfers and corporate paperwork. While Katarina exhausted herself with horizontal cardio sessions, I was getting my own workout moving money across continents and creating legal structures that would survive nuclear warfare. The irony was absolutely delicious. She thought she was playing chess while I played checkers, manipulating the simple businessman who couldn't see past her fake affection and manufactured excuses. Meanwhile, I was playing three-dimensional financial warfare while she was playing house with muscular idiots who thought biceps were more valuable than business intelligence. She'd married someone she considered an easy mark, not realizing she'd actually married someone who could make money disappear better than professional magicians. My lawyer became my new best friend, the best divorce attorney in Thessaloniki, specializing in high-asset cases involving international complications. This guy knew more ways to protect wealth than I knew ways to import wine. Together, we created a financial structure so complex that even forensic accountants would need advanced degrees just to understand where to start looking for hidden assets. Documentation became obsessive. Every receipt for Stella's expenses, every record of Katarina's monthly girls' trips, every credit card statement showing mysterious charges, all carefully organized and stored in multiple locations. If she wanted to play the victim in divorce court, she'd have to explain why the poor struggling wife had been spending thousands monthly on luxury experiences, while her husband worked like a slave to fund her lifestyle. The cryptocurrency portfolio required special attention. Digital assets that existed only as computer code, stored in wallets with keys that lived in my memory alone. Hundreds of thousands of euros worth of Bitcoin and Ethereum that no divorce court could locate, freeze, or redistribute. The future of money protecting me from the oldest profession's modern practitioners. 3 months of intensive financial engineering later, I was ready. Every vulnerable asset had been relocated, restructured, or rendered invisible to divorce proceedings. The wealthy businessman she'd married to support her and her daughter's lifestyle had transformed into a modestly paid consultant with minimal visible assets. On paper, I looked broke. In reality, I was bulletproof. The trap was set, the fortress was complete, and I was reviewing shipping manifests like any other Tuesday afternoon when my phone rang. The fatal car crash plot twist. Police officer, very professional, very direct. Your wife has been in a serious car accident on the Thessaloniki-Chalkidiki highway. You need to come to the hospital immediately. That tone of voice that means someone's day just got permanently ruined, except I had no idea whose day was about to improve dramatically. I drove to the hospital expecting the worst but hoping for something manageable. Maybe broken bones, maybe a concussion, maybe expensive medical bills but eventual recovery. What I found was so much better than my wildest dreams. The emergency room doctor met me at the entrance with that expression medical professionals perfect for delivering life-changing news to unsuspecting family members. Your wife died on impact, he explained with practiced sympathy. The car hit a tree at 140 kilometers per hour. No skid marks, which meant no attempt to brake. Instantaneous death, no suffering, no chance for final words or deathbed confessions. But here's where the story gets interesting, he continued. There was a passenger in the vehicle. Male, 28 years old, survived with minor injuries. He's asking to speak with you. The passenger turned out to be Yannis Kostakis, personal trainer extraordinaire, built like a Greek god statue and apparently specializing in exercises that required removing most of your clothing. I found him in the ICU wearing nothing but bandages and a hospital gown, high as a kite on whatever painkillers they'd pumped into his perfectly sculpted body. The irony was absolutely delicious. My wife's final ride had been with her side piece instead of her husband. Yannis was experiencing that wonderful combination of shock, guilt, and pharmaceutical enhancement that makes people confess things they'd normally take to their graves. The moment he saw me, the words started pouring out like wine from a broken amphora. He was sorry, so incredibly sorry, it wasn't supposed to happen like this. Katarina was driving too fast because they were fighting about something. He never meant for anyone to get hurt. The affair had been going on for 14 months. He babbled between morphine-induced pauses. 14 months of private training sessions that had nothing to do with cardiovascular fitness and everything to do with cardiovascular excitement. They'd been meeting at hotels, his apartment, even my own house when I was traveling for business. My wife had been getting her horizontal workout routine in our marital bed, while I was negotiating olive oil contracts in Kalamata. But wait, there's more. Yanni's, bless his drug-addled honesty, revealed that he wasn't her only fitness instructor. There had been others. The tennis coach from the country club, some Pilates instructor named Demetrius, even that rich Dubai client from her hotel job who apparently enjoyed very personal Greek hospitality during his business trips. My wife had been operating a full-service athletic program with multiple trainers, specializing in different forms of physical education. The absurdity of the situation hit me like a cargo ship to the face. This muscular moron was trying to explain why he'd been in a car with a married woman at 2 in the afternoon on a Tuesday. His excuse involved lunch plans, gym schedules, and some complicated story about helping her pick out anniversary gifts for me. Anniversary gifts. The woman had been shopping for presents to celebrate our marriage, while planning to drive off with her personal trainer for afternoon cardio sessions. Yanni's kept apologizing and explaining and confessing, creating a verbal documentary of my wife's secret life that was more entertaining than anything on television. According to his drug-enhanced testimony, Katarina had been juggling multiple affairs with the organizational skills of a Fortune 500 executive. Calendars, schedules, backup plans, even a secret phone for coordinating her various romantic appointments. The doctor returned with additional details that made the whole situation even more surreal. They'd been dressed inappropriately for whatever story they'd planned to tell if caught together. Katarina was wearing lingerie under her clothes, the expensive stuff I'd paid for but never seen her model. Yanni's had been wearing gym clothes, except they were the kind of workout attire designed more for seduction than actual exercise. My wife had literally died while cheating on me. Not metaphorically, not symbolically, but actually and completely while engaged in adultery. Her final moments on earth had been spent with someone who wasn't her husband, doing things that weren't part of our marriage vows, funded by money from the man she'd been systematically betraying for over a year. Standing in that hospital room listening to her lover confess their extended affair while hooked up to monitors and IV drips, something unexpected happened. Instead of the crushing grief I should have felt, instead of the devastating loss that should have destroyed me, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: relief. Pure, overwhelming relief that this nightmare marriage was finally over without requiring lawyers, court battles, or alimony payments. The twisted recognition hit me gradually as Yanni's continued his morphine-powered confession. Katarina's death had actually solved a massive problem I hadn't even finished creating solutions for. All those months of asset protection, financial restructuring, and divorce preparation had become completely unnecessary. The universe had delivered the ultimate justice, with timing so perfect it felt like divine intervention. The woman who'd been planning to financially destroy me in divorce court had instead done me the biggest favor of my life by removing herself permanently from the equation. Karma had finally balanced the books and the accounting was absolutely perfect. But my relief would be short-lived, because Katarina's family was about to prove that greed doesn't die with the greedy. The funeral fiasco and family greed. The funeral director started calling within hours, 8 times in the first day alone. Each conversation brought increasingly elaborate demands disguised as Greek Orthodox tradition. Apparently, when your cheating wife dies in a car crash with her personal trainer, proper mourning requires bankrupting yourself to prove your devotion. Katarina's sister, Eleni, appointed herself chief grief coordinator and financial planner. She had mapped out a production that would have impressed Hollywood directors. Solid mahogany casket with gold fixtures for €15,000, because pine wasn't dignified enough for someone who died getting her cardio workout with another man. €5,000 for professional mourners who'd never met Katarina but could generate tears on command like trained seals. The total bill came to €55,000 for a send-off that would have made Roman emperors jealous. My response was simple and devastating. Basic cremation, no reception, no paid mourners, no golden casket. The family's reaction was immediate and predictable. Suddenly, everyone discovered deep religious convictions about proper burial rites and Orthodox traditions. Amazing how spiritual people become when someone else is writing the checks. Eleni brought reinforcements in the form of Father Demetrios, who lectured me about my responsibilities as a husband before God. The priest emphasized how Katarina deserved dignity in death regardless of any marital problems we might have experienced. I explained that my wife had died while cheating with her personal trainer, which seemed like relevant information for someone discussing divine judgment and proper respect. The tears started flowing when religious guilt didn't work. Eleni transformed into a professional victim, explaining how devastated the family was by my heartless response to their grief. How could I dishonor Katarina's memory by refusing to provide the funeral she deserved? The performance was Oscar-worthy, complete with dramatic gestures and strategic pauses for maximum emotional impact. While the family planned their grief extravaganza, Stella decided to supplement the funeral fund through entrepreneurial activities. She broke into my apartment using keys she'd somehow acquired and helped herself to my Rolex collection worth €80,000. Security cameras captured her entire amateur operation, and she got caught trying to sell a stolen Omega watch at a pawn shop. Seeing my stepdaughter in handcuffs while holding my property was more satisfying than any expensive funeral could have been. The family's financial desperation reached new heights when they started asking about life insurance policies. Elani kept hinting about Katarina's coverage and how the money should help pay for proper funeral arrangements. Turned out the policy had been cancelled 2 years earlier, and the €30,000 surrender value had been transferred to an account belonging to her personal trainer Yannis. Even in death, Katarina was still financing her affairs while leaving me to handle the bills. She'd liquidated our insurance protection to fund her romantic adventures, then died before explaining this creative financial arrangement to her grieving family. The woman had literally stolen money meant to support her survivors and given it to the guy who survived the car crash that killed her. The manipulation tactics escalated when the family realized their golden funeral wasn't happening. Suddenly I was heartless, cruel, disrespectful to the dead, and culturally insensitive to Greek traditions. They brought more priests, more relatives, more professional guilt trippers who specialized in extracting money from grieving widowers. The pressure campaign would have impressed military psychological warfare experts. Elani's final strategy involved public shaming through social media and community gossip. She started telling everyone how her sister's cheapskate husband was refusing to provide a decent burial for his beloved wife. The story spread through Thessaloniki faster than olive oil gossip, painting me as the villain who was dishonoring his dead spouse through financial cruelty. The breaking point came when I realized this family would continue bleeding me dry even after Katarina was gone. They turned her death into another opportunity for financial extraction, using grief and tradition as weapons to access my wallet. Even cremated, she was still costing me money through her parasitic relatives who felt entitled to expensive emotional theater funded by the man she'd betrayed. The decision was simple and final. Basic cremation, no negotiation, no additional expenses, no funding for their grief production. If they wanted elaborate funeral arrangements, they could finance their own dramatic performances. I'd already paid enough for Katarina's lifestyle and wasn't about to subsidize her death the way I'd subsidized her affairs. But refusing to fund their theatrical mourning display was apparently just the opening act in their campaign to destroy me completely. The nuclear website and public vindication. 2 weeks later, Stella decided to escalate from petty theft to full-scale character assassination. The little sociopath gave an interview to some Athens tabloid blog, spinning a story that would make fiction writers jealous. According to her creative version of events, I was a violent, controlling monster who couldn't handle my wife's desire for happiness. She painted me as some kind of organized crime figure using my import business as a front for illegal activities. The cherry on top was her direct accusation that I'd murdered Katarina because I couldn't accept her leaving me. The interview went viral faster than gossip spreads through a Greek village. Suddenly, everyone was an expert on domestic violence and criminal psychology. Social media exploded with hashtags calling for justice for poor innocent Stella and her tragically murdered mother. Complete strangers were sharing the article with passionate commentary about men who kill their wives rather than let them find happiness. I went from grieving widower to suspected murderer in 48 hours, all thanks to a teenage thief with a talent for creative storytelling. The brilliant part of her strategy was timing. She released this character assassination right when public sympathy was highest for the young woman who'd lost her mother in a tragic accident. People were ready to believe the worst about the heartless husband who'd refused to pay for an elaborate funeral. Her story fit perfectly into the narrative that I was cruel, selfish, and probably dangerous. The internet had found its villain, and I was starring in the role. But Stella made one crucial mistake. She declared war on someone who'd spent months gathering evidence of every lie, theft, and betrayal this family had committed. While she was busy spinning fairy tales for tabloid journalists, I'd been documenting reality with the thoroughness of a forensic accountant. Time to educate the public about the difference between fiction and fact. I hired a PR team and launched The Truth About Katarina, GR, within 72 hours. If the internet wanted drama, I'd give them drama backed by undeniable evidence that would make courtroom prosecutors jealous. The website opened with a simple statement: the truth about my wife's death, her affairs, her daughter's criminal behavior, and her family's attempts to extract money through manipulation and lies. The private investigator's report went online first. High-resolution photos of Katarina entering hotels with Yannis, timestamps showing their afternoon encounters, documentation of their 14-month affair. The secret bank account where she transferred €30,000 from our life insurance policy to her lover's account. The crown jewel was a video from Yannis's cloud storage showing him and Katarina in my own bed. laughing about my perceived stupidity and discussing their plans to take me for everything in the upcoming divorce. The security footage from Stella's amateur burglary operation was pure gold. Crystal clear video of her breaking into my apartment, struggling to fit stolen watches into her purse, and looking around nervously like a cartoon thief. The footage of her trying to steal my signed sports jersey was particularly entertaining, watching a teenage criminal attempt grand larceny while looking terrified of getting caught. I created a dedicated section about Stella featuring her academic records, showing failing grades despite €25,000 annual tuition, documentation of the €400,000 I'd spent supporting her over 6 years, text messages where she called me a walking wallet and discussed strategies for extracting more money. Her arrest record for robbery completed the portrait of a professional victim who was actually a calculating criminal. The website included Katarina's emails with her divorce lawyer discussing strategies for financially destroying me, plans to claim domestic abuse, calculations of potential alimony payments, and discussions about hiding assets while maximizing her settlement. The woman who died while cheating had been planning to destroy me financially while maintaining her victim narrative. Public reaction was swift and brutal. The hashtag switched from supporting Stella to supporting me within hours. People were sharing the evidence faster than wine flows at a Greek wedding, and the narrative completely reversed. Comment sections filled with outrage about false accusations, sympathy for men betrayed by manipulative wives, and anger about teenage criminals playing victim after getting caught stealing. Stella's Instagram account went private immediately, as thousands of people flooded her messages with evidence of her lies. Major outlets began questioning her story, as journalists started reaching out for interviews about false domestic violence allegations and social media manipulation. The internet had discovered something more entertaining than a murder mystery, a real-time destruction of an elaborate lie supported by documentary evidence. I gave interviews to legitimate journalists, calmly presenting the evidence and explaining my position. As I told them, I wasn't asking anyone to feel sorry for me, just correcting the record. My wife died while committing adultery. Her daughter is a thief. Her family are grifters. These are provable facts supported by documentation that anyone can verify. The validation was incredible. Years of being gaslit, manipulated, and financially exploited had been reversed by 72 hours of truth-telling backed by evidence. The internet had delivered justice more effectively than any court system, and the sweet taste of vindication was better than the finest wine I'd ever imported. 72 hours, a website and the internet saw the truth. Boom, revenge served colder than any eulogy. But the real satisfaction was still coming when I realized exactly how much better my life had become without these parasites bleeding me dry. The ultimate revenge, living well. The numbers tell the whole story. €300,000 richer after cutting off the financial parasites who'd been bleeding me dry for years. My import business was generating record profits without the constant drain of supporting people who despised me. The house in Calamaria had never been quieter, cleaner, or more peaceful. For the first time in years, I could walk through my own home without wondering what expensive disaster awaited me around the next corner. The parasites were now scrambling for rent money while I toasted to peace. Yannis went from personal trainer to broke loser faster than he could bench press his own body weight. His gym membership got cancelled, his apartment lease terminated, and his BMW repossessed. The muscular moron who thought he was getting free money through my wife's generous nature discovered that sugar mama arrangements don't include life insurance benefits for surviving lovers. Now he was calling me twice weekly, apologizing for the affair and asking if I needed any personal training services. Stella's career trajectory took an interesting turn toward food service. The private school princess who treated me like hired help while I funded her lifestyle was now serving gyros at a restaurant in Kalamata. €25,000 annually for premium education had prepared her perfectly for asking customers if they wanted extra tzatziki sauce. She'd gone from designer clothes and luxury vacations to polyester uniforms and public transportation, earning minimum wage while living in a studio apartment her grandmother rented for her. Katarina's sister Elani had become a professional victim on social media, posting daily updates about her family's financial struggles and her cruel brother-in-law who'd abandoned them in their time of need. Her posts generated sympathy from strangers but zero actual money, which was exactly the help she deserved. The woman who demanded €55,000 for funeral arrangements was now crowdfunding grocery money and getting ignored by the same people who'd supported her grief theater. My business was thriving without the constant distraction of domestic warfare and financial hemorrhaging. Import orders had increased 40% since I could focus completely on building relationships with suppliers instead of managing home-based psychological terrorism. The money that used to disappear into Stella's education and Katarina's affairs was now generating additional revenue through expanded operations and premium product lines. Maria entered my life like morning sunshine after years of living in emotional darkness. A genuine person who worked as a translator for international businesses, intelligent conversation without hidden agendas, physical attraction without manipulation tactics. She'd heard about my story through the website drama and approached me at a business conference in Athens. Instead of needing my money or demanding expensive lifestyle support, she actually contributed to my happiness and success. The contrast was so dramatic it felt like living in a different universe. Quiet dinners where we discussed books and travel plans instead of therapy bills and private school tuition. Weekend trips funded by two people who both worked for their money instead of one person extracting resources from the other. Physical intimacy without negotiation, guilt, or the feeling that I was receiving charity from someone doing me reluctant favors. Every aspect of my life had improved measurably since cutting off the people who'd been treating me like a human credit card with unlimited spending privileges. Better sleep, better health, better business performance, better relationships with legitimate friends who actually enjoyed my company. The stress-related health problems that had developed during my marriage disappeared completely once the source of constant anxiety got removed permanently. I'm in the best shape of my life because rage is apparently great pre-workout. I'm not even sad about Katarina's death. Is that messed up? My wife of 6 years is dead and all I feel is lighter. The beautiful irony was impossible to ignore. Her betrayal had freed me from feeling guilty about ending a toxic relationship. Her family's greed had shown me exactly how little they'd ever cared about me as a person versus what I could provide financially. I'd spent years convincing myself that being a good husband and stepfather required accepting abuse and financing people who hated me. The truth was much simpler. Some people view kindness as weakness and generosity as an invitation for exploitation. Learning to say no to their endless demands wasn't cruelty, it was self-preservation disguised as common sense. The lesson crystallized perfectly as I watched my former tormentors struggle with consequences while I flourished without their constant negativity. Getting rid of toxic people isn't just emotionally liberating, it's financially profitable and psychologically healing. The math had been simple from the beginning. One grieving widower plus two professional manipulators should have equaled pouring olive oil straight down the drain. Instead, it turned out that removing the manipulators from the equation was the best business decision I'd ever made. Standing in my peaceful home, running a successful business, planning a future with someone who actually added value to my life instead of extracting it, I finally understood what I'd been missing. Self-respect feels better than any validation from people who only appreciate your wallet. Living well isn't just the best revenge, it's the only revenge worth pursuing when you finally learn to value your own worth over other people's endless demands. The universe delivered justice through chaos, freeing me from years of legal battles and financial destruction that would have left me broke and broken. My wife's death while cheating saved me from a toxic marriage that was slowly killing my spirit and bank account. You don't owe toxic people your money, your forgiveness, or your continued suffering. Cut them off completely and watch how quickly your life improves when parasites stop draining your resources and energy. Drop a comment below and tell me about the worst con artist who tried to play you. I'll read every single story because misery loves company, but success loves better company even more.